let's go to our man, Derek Bodner. All PHLY Sixers show does a great job. And Derek has a keen understanding of the salary cap, of roster construction. I love the way you do this, Derek. You really have a handle on this. And this is going to be your time to shine, buddy.
Thank you, Ant. I appreciate that. It is something where it feels like the NBA is trending more and more towards like a football type of thing where the offseason is just as important as the regular season, and that is especially true with this team because, like you said, this really feels like sort of like the last hurrah, the last bit of flexibility they have to get a real difference maker alongside Joel Embiid. It feels a little bit like 2018 back when they were pursuing LeBron and they had max cap space, they had all kinds of stuff to trade, and you had a young talent in Ben Simmons who the city still believed in. The one key difference is that Joel Embiid is 6 years older. And because of that, this is, there is more pressure on this one than there ever has been to get this right. Because I think one of the most unforgivable sins is for a franchise to waste a superstar's prime. And the Sixers are, look, they got a little bit of a Hail Mary there with Tyrese Maxiell that extends the window quite a bit. But they have one more big move they need to make, and that will happen this summer if it ever does.
So let's look at the candidates, right? Like my number one choice, assuming that Siakam goes back to Indiana because Indiana has the bird rights, so can pay him more than anybody else, would be LeBron. I mean, it makes perfect sense for LeBron to come here and show them how to win. He can win here where he probably can't win in LA. How do you assess the top choices?
Yeah, it's always tough because so much of it's going to come down to what LeBron wants and what Paul George wants, and Daryl Morey can have his eyes on either of them or both of them, and it may not end up mattering, especially in Paul George's case. I still believe if Steve Ballmer pays Paul George, then I don't think the Sixers are going to have a chance to pursue him. But that contract is going to be all of these contracts are going to be terrifying. I think LeBron's probably more amenable to a short-term deal just because that's been his history. But do either one of them really want to leave LA? I think LeBron's probably the more likely candidate just because, like you said, I think the Sixers have a better chance to compete. I think Paul George really wants to be home. And like I said, if the Clippers do end up paying him, I think he will end up staying there. But that is still a big if because that is going to be, like I said, a pretty bad contract. Neither of them are necessarily. I think Paul George conceptually, just as a skill level, is probably the cleaner fit. He's a little more comfortable playing off ball. He's still got a little more left defensively, I think, than LeBron does. At this point, LeBron has to conserve his energy a little bit. But there is just when you have a chance to get the generational player of this era, even if he is 39 going on 40, that is always going to have an allure. And because he's been there so many times, and Sixers and Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey obviously have not. Look, I think Daryl Morey's in a position where if he can get either one of them, he's going to pursue them hard.
Do you think it almost feels like the reason why I look at LeBron, right, and it's the obvious. He treats his body like Brady treated his body. So the longevity thing is not as scary for 2 years. But it's more the idea of teaching them how to win. It almost feels like, and you saw a little bit down the stretch in the Knicks games, although that series was incredibly exciting series, they really need to learn how to win. Like that game 2, up by 5, 30-some seconds left, like you got to win that game. And that's kind of what LeBron brings, which is the blueprint to understanding how to win. And that's kind of been an issue through the post-process days.
Yeah, and I think sometimes when people will hear knowing how to win, they will think it's just like sports talk speak. But no, that's experience. That is knowing how to react in key moments. That is knowing the counter when teams come at you. Like so much of Tyrese Maxey's development over the last couple of years, there's a huge jump in skill level, and especially with that outside shot. But a big reason he got better from last year to this year is because he saw a lot more defenses. He now knows how to react to stuff that 2 years ago he had no idea how to react to. And he's still not completely there. Like you mentioned in game 2, if he calls a timeout, the Sixers may still be playing basketball. That's okay. He's a young ascending star, but that is knowing how to win. That's almost quite literally knowing how to win in that instance. But so much of the game is just, like I said, picking up on tendencies, knowing how to respond under pressure situations. That comes from experience. Nobody has more experience than LeBron, quite literally, in terms of the number of minutes that he's played. And nobody really thinks the game at a higher level than LeBron. And even if his physical skills are declining, and look, like you mentioned, there is no 39-year-old in better shape than LeBron James. And with the way he's played the last couple of years, any concern you would have about the aging, he proves that wrong almost every single time. There is still a concern, for sure. Everyone reaches a threshold where they just can't do it anymore. But yeah, I certainly agree that he would have a big imprint on this team, and his experience and his knowledge are a part of that equation for sure.
Derek Bodner with us, the big story of the day presented by TrueMark Financial Credit Union. Check out TrueMark.com/PHLY. Stop at your local branch. Learn more about the credit union difference at TrueMark Financial today. All right, so brother, let's look at this. If PG stays in LA, LeBron stays in LA, Siakam stays in Indiana, where are you at? Now, all the Jimmy rumors have started to surface again that he may be unhappy in Miami, and that, of course, would have to be a trade. So let's make you Daryl Morey. If that scenario happens, what's your strategy?
Yeah, and look, I think with Jimmy, would I talk myself into it? Sure. Jimmy's a fantastic player to watch. He brings a lot of that grit and determination I think a lot of people think this team lacks. He has a friendship with Joel Embiid that still exists. We would all talk ourselves into it for sure, but there's a lot of risk in that one. The number of miles he's played, he struggles to get through a regular season healthy as well. He not only would you have to give a big extension to, but you would have to give a couple of first-round draft picks to, which would compromise your trade flexibility. There is concern there. I think he is the riskiest of the three. But like I said, would I talk myself into it? Absolutely. I'm a fan of basketball, and it would be fun to watch. I think real interesting. Go ahead.
No, I was just.
Oh, I thought you were gonna.
You know why I was laughing? Because I had the same exact reaction, which is I don't love it for all the reasons you said. Like, you just can't count on him, like, health-wise, and Jimmy's Jimmy, like, he's in his own character. But I could talk myself into it. Like, if those odds are up, just like you.
Yeah. No, I think it starts. Look, there are some lower level free agents out there, like Bruce Brown, Malik Monk, things of that. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, I believe, is a free agent. There are lower level role players that you could go out there and target. And with the Sixers, they could have upwards of $65 million in cap space, depending on who they renounce and who they let go. You could sign 2 or maybe even 3 role players of that ilk. I think the thing to really watch out for, though, is trades. This is there's a new collective bargaining agreement that just took in effect. I think it was 2 years ago. Some of the impacts of that are still coming in. It's a lot more punitive for high dollar teams than it was in the past. There's what's called a second apron, and it is as close as the NBA has ever gotten to a hard cap. It's not a true hard cap, but once you exceed that, making moves becomes really, really difficult. I think a lot of teams are going to try to avoid being up in that range. And that's going to make a lot of teams look at maybe some of these long-term deals that were previously under the former CBA viewed as a good contract, one that they want to get out of. And the Sixers having cap space have a lot more flexibility in terms of taking back salary. So I think if you strike out on your top couple of free agents, I expect this to be a heavier than normal trade period there in the summer. And a big part of that is because of the changes in the collective bargaining agreement. So I think a lot of this, we could go through the Bruce Browns and Malik Monks and all that of the world. I think a lot of it could then come down to, if you miss out on your top targets, what moves what are the players under contract that we're not even thinking about right now? That's part of why I think it could be a real hectic summer.
What do you think of Lauri Markkanen? I like the way he could fit.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, and he's perfect because he's young. Like, you could see he could help you if you're looking at it with Joel and Tyrese having maybe like a 3-year window. Well, Joel's still going to be really good. Markkanen can then help you alongside Tyrese Maxiell after that sort of transition. He would be great for a long-term piece. There's a lot of report out there that Utah has no interest in moving him, that if they did, the price would be obscene. A lot of times when GMs talk to local reporters about the trade value of players currently under contract, they're not being entirely truthful. It is propaganda as much as it is a true reflection of what it would take. That being said, all the reports coming out of Utah are that he's pretty much off the table and that a trade package would be obscene. And it makes sense. He is like I say, young, really good two-way big who can spread the floor. He would fit, like I said, alongside Joel Embiid in minutes without Joel Embiid. He could be your backup center. He'd be fantastic. I'm just not sure he's really all that gettable.
All right, so Derek Bodner with us. I love he's our GM on staff, man. Nobody has an understanding of the NBA salary cap and of player contracts like Derek. This portion of the Anthony Gargano Show is brought to you by Rite Aid. That's right. Right, visit your local Rite Aid pharmacy. Stock up on allergy relief or catch up on immunizations for RSV, shingles, and more. Walk in or schedule a vaccine appointment at riteaid.com. All right, so I want to see. Forget contract situations, right? Let's look at the trade pieces. Are there players that on your own wish list that you would circle, that you would say, I want to inquire about player X?
That's a great question. I'll be honest, I haven't really started fully diving into that as of yet. Obviously, everyone is going to bring up Devon's cousin, and of course, you're going to inquire about Bridges as much, Mikal Bridges, as often and as frequently and as forcefully as you can. He would be pretty close to a perfect fit. In terms of other players who aren't necessarily, like I said, a free agent, I haven't truthfully completely gone through that list and audio just screwed up. Gone through that list and gone. No, I don't necessarily have a great answer.
Oh, that's all right. Let me throw one at you. My man Eddie Wright throws out Dejounte Murray.
Yeah, he's one that we talked about a lot here over the weeks and months leading up to the trade deadline. He has obviously the fit in Atlanta with Trae Young has not been perfect, and they have not reached the success that you would want. You know, he shot the three ball a lot better for much of this year, and because of that, I think there's some level of interest. I think he's always been a little overrated as a defender, useful, not a bad defender, but maybe not quite as good as he looked in his early career in San Antonio. But because of that development of the three ball, there's some interest. But I worry about what he wants his role to be. I think he wants to be a lead guard, and he's not going to be that here, or at least he's going to have to share that ball handling responsibilities with Tyrese Maxiell. So can you keep him happy for the duration of the contract and his next contract? That would be where some of my concern comes in. But clearly, Atlanta's going to look to make significant changes, and he is most likely one to move. So I think with him, it's going to in part come down to what other options are out there. Ideally, I think I would want a little more size, a little more comfortability playing off ball, because even with him, even with the improved jump shot, he still wants to create off the dribble, create off of a pick and roll. And I do worry a little bit about that fit with Maxey. But in terms of talent level, I think he's up towards the top of what you're going to be able to do if you strike out on the big names. It just is the fit right, and I do have my concerns there. And can you keep him happy long term?
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not in love with the fit there. And listen, if you have your druthers, you got to get it. You need a wing. Like they've been devoid of wings. Like we've had nothing but legs and thighs. Right? Like
Yeah.
we got to get a wing. Like it excites me. Like that's why I think about Markkanen, right? Because he's the stretch forward type, and he's a good fit. Like he may not be a traditional three, but he's a good fit. He can shoot it, the whole thing. We talk about Mikal all the time, and he was the perfect fit. Oh my God! So I have Jay Wright coming on Thursday, right? And one of the things during this period that they have missed so badly is the Villanova player, right? Like the Villanova player is a winner. Jay makes them into winners. And then we got it shoved down our throat in this series, Derek. Like they had Villanova in their backyard and failed to take advantage of it.
Yeah, and it really is. I hate being overly reductive about this, but like if you just swapped out Tobias Harris for Josh Hart, I think the Sixers are still playing basketball. It's just making one change on the roster with one player on the roster, and I think it could swing the entire series. Yeah, they don't, and most of the guys who would fill that role, like Kyle Lowry, might sort of have that kind of in him, and obviously he went to Villanova, but he's 38. Like you can't rely on him to be a 35, 40-minute per game player like you can Josh Hart. And that's why I think a lot of people will look at this roster right now and say, all right, forget pursuing that third star. Get me some really good role players. And a lot of times finding, like, how many teams has Josh Hart been on at this point? Those kind of players sort of like change teams and cycle throughout the league until they really find their footing. So I think that can be risky a little bit as well. Like I think a lot of people look at the stars and the aging and, that could be a bad contract. Finding role players through free agency is really tough too. But a lot of people will go that route just because Embiid and Maxey were so great in this series, and yet they came up short in large part because, like I said, 3 through 7 were just not good enough. So I think it would be great to have somebody with that kind of mindset. And Josh Hart specifically seems to epitomize everything that they just don't have.
I know. And this team could also use another a guy that can facilitate, right? That can play lead guard or point forward. Someone that and that's the one thing we all adore Maxey, right? But when his shot's not falling, like he still has to be able to facilitate. And then maybe that's not truly his DNA, right? Like he's such a dynamic offensive scorer that it's nice to have a secondary guy that can facilitate for you.
Yeah, well, and that's sort of the nice thing about Maxey is not only he has that 2-man chemistry with Joel Embiid, and you want to put him in pick and rolls, dribble handoffs at the top, but he's also an elite catch and shoot player. Like you put him in the corner, and not that you want to put Tyrese Maxiell in the corner for too long, but if you have to do that to make room for another ball handler, he will spread the floor. He will make that shot. He will attack closeouts and get to the rim. Because of that, he has that ability to play both styles. I think they look this offense. I think looked cleanest a lot of times when Tyrese Maxiell was sharing the court with Kyle Lowry, in part because you had another playmaker there, in part because Tyrese is very good at playing off ball. I do agree. He made steps, I think, as a playmaker and a floor general. He needs to make a couple more. You would love to get a player who can play both on and off ball. That's part of why someone like LeBron or Paul George is so interesting, because they can run an offense as well. I certainly agree. Like if they could get a 32-year-old Kyle Lowry, that would have, I think, changed the entire series. Unfortunately, you can't do that, but you do have to go out there and look for one of that type.
I got to tell you, I could do this all day. I love talking ball with you. Roster construction, GM Bodner.
Good news. I got some bad news, I suppose. I got some free time over the summer now, so let's talk some hoops.
Listen, we're doing it,
buddy.
buddy.
In a hotel in India right now, but what can you do? I have no control over that one.
I know, me too. I feel you, brother. Great stuff, man. Thank you.
Yep, my pleasure. Anytime.
Here he is, Derek Bodner. Read him, watch him.
We all silly like the mayor.